We'll call this meeting to order. Before we get started, I do want to let the public know that Councilmember Hills Zayat is still on maternity leave, and she plans to join us at our November meeting. So anyway, so just wanted to update everyone on that. So first item on the agenda is the moment of silence. I would like to have people keep in their thoughts and prayers. Donna, is it Crossrich, Jack? Is that how you say her last name? I want to make sure I say it correctly.
Donna Krasnevich.
Okay, thank you. Her father passed away on October 5th. He was 97, which is a very good long life, but I know how difficult it is to lose a parent. So please let's keep her, Donna, and her family in our thoughts and prayers. And I would like to lift up Peter Stewart. He had to put his dog Murphy down, and I know how difficult that is. And Murphy had been around a very long time. So please keep Peter in your thoughts and prayers. Murphy was his best friend, and I know he missed. So does anybody else have someone they'd like to recognize or think about this evening? Not seeing any hands. Okay, if we could just bow our heads for a moment of silence. Okay, thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. Council, you've received the minutes for the closed session on July 19th and August 30th, and the town council meeting minutes on September 13th. We had a couple of little corrections made on the council meeting and none on the closed sessions. So if I can get a motion. You want to do one at a time? I'm happy to do that.
I'll move to approve the council meeting minutes from September 2011.
September 13th?
September 13th, 2011.
Okay, thank you.
Second.
Okay, I think you said 2011, but I think 2021.
2021, excuse me, September 13th, 2021.
Okay.
Apologies.
The minutes from the 2011 were good too, though.
I wouldn't be surprised if you remember them.
I know, right? Okay, Darren seconded that. So all those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand. Thank you.
Aye.
Okay, if I can get a motion on the closed meeting minutes on July 19th.
I'll move that we approve the closed session minutes from July 19th, 2021.
Okay, is there a second?
Second it.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. And the closed session meeting minutes on the 30th of August.
Darren, we're waiting for you.
Sorry, I'll make a motion to approve the closed session minutes of August 30th, 2021.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you very much, Susan. Thank you. All right, so we'll go down to the mayor and town council. And number one, Matt.
Sure. Mayor Furman, if you'd like to acknowledge the community coalition letter to the County Redistricting Commission. It was included in the council documents along with the public.
Yeah, for those who are not aware that the electric had asked that 2 additional county council members be added to the 9, making a total of 11. I guess because of the large population within the county. So we will have 11 districts in Montgomery County. So there is a commission that has been working to slice up the county to include these 2 districts. So the town of Kensington, along with the other municipalities in the lower part of Montgomery County, have asked to continue to stay in the same district. So there was a coalition letter of the Chevy Chases as well as town of Kensington and Garrett Park requesting that the commission continue to keep all the municipalities in the lower part of Montgomery County in the same district. And then the town of Kensington has followed up with the Chevy Chase View as well as Garrett Park with the second letter that we sent out today because the maps that the commission is proposing, there are 3 maps, and they are proposing that 3 municipalities be severed from the Chevy Chases into, right now it's 3 different districts that they have not yet chosen. So we have requested that, again, that we remain with the municipalities in the Chevy Chase. Down to, that includes Friendship Heights. So is there any questions about that? Seeing any hands? Okay, so let's move on to number 2. To the Kensington website refresh. Matt?
Mayor and Council, Justin Watson, on behalf of AS Creative Services, is with us this evening to discuss the proposal to refresh our existing website. We hired Justin's company back in 2017 to design a new website for us, and we're looking to make some back-end changes, specifically with regards to our calendar and some plugins to kind of help staff keep the website moving for another few years.
Okay. Council, do you have any questions? I believe we sent around the proposal maybe, maybe 4 weeks ago?
Mhm.
And
Questions, I'm sure Connor has a bunch, but I know this is your area, Connor, but I was just curious, Matt, I noted, and Justin, I noticed in the proposal, a lot of it was to help town staff with more easy usability access and kind of the interface for us to input on the back end. But will it make it actually more user-friendly for the resident too who's using it? Because I know there are some clunky elements to it right now, and I was curious if it was also going to prioritize that. And then I guess I also noticed that I guess it's still right now housed on your server. Is that right? Is that I questioned just about whether we have any security concerns about that. I'm sure everything's fine, but I'll punt that one over to Connor because that's his area.
Oh, it's on Justin's server. I'll let Justin answer.
Justin, you are on mute. There you go.
Those are my
Yeah,
two
no,
questions.
I was just waiting. I was waiting for the right time.
Okay.
Amanda is my wife, so I couldn't figure out. I can't change my name, so she's in spirit or just in the other room. So, thanks for having me tonight, everybody. And yeah, so to answer your question, Nate, a couple of things. First of all, part of what not only is going to be back-end and more user-friendly for town staff, we did the Explore Kensington website, so there's some commonality between the way the backends are built out for that site, which Carrie Ann from the town handles, and the updates that we're proposing. So, when it comes to updating the website, that's going to be a much easier process for them. Now, with that being said, and I think this kind of dovetails on what Matt was talking about. Some of what we're going to be doing will have implications on the front end of the website as well. So we're going to be making some improvements. I think the gist of it is the overall look and feel of the site will stay relatively the same, minus some what we call UI, user interface, changes. However, there are some things like the calendar that will work better. There's some integrations with permitting that are going to work better. So there are some elements of the website that we're certainly going to look at. And this has been, since we did the website previously, this has been, there's been some good time to figure out what works, what doesn't. So, some of the things we have some ability to go through those pieces of the site and really analyze and make some changes there. So now to the final question. The final question in this series of questions maybe is about the security of the site. So on our servers, we don't house servers in some, in a closet somewhere, they're in, Google Cloud Platform. In fact, we're going to be upgrading. Well, you aren't on Google Cloud Platform currently. We're going to be upgrading you all to Google Cloud Platform moving forward, which has inherently just a number of benefits to it, speed being one of them. But we have server level security, and we actually just implemented more site level security. And we do core and plugin updates on a scheduled monthly basis for for the town's website and all the websites that we host. I mean, we do host probably over 160 some websites at the moment, and do that rinse and repeat type work. We also are notified. We run malware scans now. We just increased it for all of our clients to a daily. It might have been daily. No, I don't know if it was daily for the town, but we just increased that. So we do daily scans on every website. So if we notice a vulnerability or a piece of malware on the website, which to Connor, you can say if this is right or wrong. It's not if, it's when. You're going to get malware on your website at some point or another. The key for us is to try to mitigate that as much as possible. But in the instance that it does happen, when it does happen, for us to get in there and clean it up, and then to figure out where did somebody get through to the website, and how to make it harder the next time. So that's the way that we approach it. But we're pretty comfortable with our level of security for our site. I'm a little OCD, so it's
that's good. It's good.
Yeah.
That's good in your profession. So
yeah.
Thank you for the responses.
Sure.
Hey, Nate, something you said though stuck out to me, which was there are some things that are a little clunky on the website. And so what I like about the proposal is that, those bullets that are on whatever page that's on, we kind of identified for Justin and AS Creative the things we knew about at the moment that we want to address with this block of hours. But we haven't, if there's other things that you see that just let Matt know.
Yeah.
Because if somebody's letting just anything you hear, it may be that it gets cleaned up with the things that are already on that list.
Yeah. It's including, not exclusively, so we'll allow for, other changes as necessary. Any other questions?
I would just say that Connor and I said, and Tracy, I'm sorry, I don't remember if you were in the same session, but at the MML conference this last week
For the
for cybersecurity.
cybersecurity and hacking. Yeah.
And it seemed like a couple of the things that were valuable were, the timely backups that could serve as restore, and then the really kind of 24/7 monitoring of hacking attempts. And, it sounded like the first thing we could do is outsource this to a vendor, which, hi, Justin. But then, the question is, do you have those sort of capabilities? And I talk about this with an extraordinarily thin veneer of knowledge that we should take comfort in.
Yeah, so we do nightly backups of the website. So in the instance, and actually it's good for a lot of reasons, not only the ones you just mentioned, but let's say that Matt, this is not a jab at you, but I know Matt's technical prowess. And so if Matt gets in there and does something crazy on the website, which he never would, but let's say he did, he would call me up and say, Justin, the website's completely messed up right now. And I would just restore backup, and I'd have, backup from the days previous. And it would come back up in, 15 minutes to the backup from the day before.
And one of the things that they emphasized was some of the larger municipalities. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that their website does, payroll, permitting, and things like that if it were offline for 2 weeks could cause significant problems. I don't know that we're to that level, but to the extent that there are things where a 3 to 5 day outage would cause concerns, I would just like to make sure that your focus is on minimizing the impact of that side of the website.
Yeah, I mean, knock on wood. That if that were to happen, that would mean that major data centers were down. Which means that a lot of the popular websites you'd go to might be down as well. It's built in the redundancy of a lot of these data centers. So, I mean, if it gives you any comfort, like we host national nonprofits on our website, or on our servers. And so, when it comes to uptime, that's the most important thing. If a site goes down 10 o'clock on a Saturday night, I'm the one getting the notification and tapping into our server admins to restore, which that is a 24/7. Their availability is 24/7. So yeah, I mean, it's probably the most important component to our business is that hosting piece. So does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, no, that's you know, you could just answer it with a lot of big technical sounding words. So the only other thing from a user interface perspective, I again, you maybe do this already, but you know, to the extent that our residents go on and dig through 3 or 4 sub menus to get to what they want, is there a way to bring the top 10 most requested services or links to a frequently, you know, clicked on link?
Yes, sorry, I don't know if you can hear that. My 1-year-old son just played with some toy that is like the loudest thing that my mother could find to buy him. So
Okay, let me just tell you, my wife has a parrot. Parrot is currently out of town, so tonight you'll have blissful quiet.
okay,
My
got
end.
it. Usually it's parrots going on. Okay. Gosh, what was the question? Oh, about
It's a top
so
10
yeah.
link clicked on.
Yeah, so the reality is like we could, and this is sometimes, I mean, this is a perfect timing for these things. Not only is what we're talking about going to, you know, add some shelf life to the website so that it would be more functional and so on and so forth, a lot of improvements, but we can focus on this specific piece and make almost like an aggregate page of these top 10 quick link type, you know, experiences that people, so that would be an easy thing that we can just discuss. So Matt and Connor and whoever else is involved in this process, we can discuss and create like a top 10, you know, here's like an aggregate page of things, you know, a quick link page for residents if that's, you know, important. So I'm absolutely, I think that can be done.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
not a problem.
Okay, just to clarify, we do not do our payroll on our website, for anybody who's asking. And permits are actually now linked to another site. They take you off site of our webpage. So let's see. Any other questions from the council? I know one improvement that we're looking forward to is the calendar. I know that's been a challenge. So Justin, can you just explain the changes?
Yeah, so the last time that we did the calendar, there was a big push to have the calendar sync up with the Google Calendar. I think with that, there may have been some benefits, you know, like interoperability between the Google Calendar and the website calendar. However, from a user experience, we had kind of limited ourselves to a calendar that didn't have quite the look and feel that I think, and the functionality that I think the town wants. So the thing is that we can find a lot more flexible calendar plugins and things that we would use for the website if we don't have that Google necessity, that connection. And so we've already identified several different calendars that I think would totally improve that functionality right off the break. And I guess it's like this idea, is the juice worth the squeeze, so to speak, you know, with having the Google connection. And in this case, I think it's shown, and this has been through years of, you know, work at this point, that it doesn't in this case. So yeah, I think that's, yeah, totally. That was a long way to say we're going to make some improvements. Can't hear you, Mayor.
A coughing thing and forgot. Council, any other questions? Is there any questions from the audience? Not seeing any hands. Okay, all right. I believe we have a resolution. Is that right at the end?
Mayor, we'll have the resolution at the end of the meeting. So.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Justin.
Thank you. I have to go put a baby to bed. Good night, everybody.
And good luck with
Justin.
that.
Thank you.
Thanks,
right.
Justin.
See you all later. Bye.
All right, bye-bye. Okay. All right, we're going to go down to number 3, and I believe everybody is here. Nate, would you like to introduce this number 3?
Sure, happy to. So this is an update from Montgomery County on the county's recently released climate action plan. It was released in August. There were several years preceding this in preparatory work and consultation, and I'm sure that our guest speakers will speak to that. But we have 2 people, one that I've worked with closely with the Pedestrian Bicycling Access Safety Group, Working Group, Sandy Brecker. She joins us from the county's Department of Transportation. So I guess before getting started and introducing the other speakers, I just want to thank Sandy for her tremendous amount of work and partnership on that front. So it's great to have you in this context too. And then we have Adriana Hochberg. I've never met Adriana in person, but she's I believe a leading or one of the leads of the action plan to develop it. And really, we asked them to join us tonight to see, to get an update on the plan, a quick summary of its 200, almost 300 pages, but also to hear what we can do specifically as a municipality, as a small municipality, as a town, to help with the implementation of that. So I think that we're looking forward to hearing your ideas. Thanks for sharing your PowerPoint in advance. Yeah, and we'll look forward to the discussion. But again, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Good evening, Mayor Furman, council members, and others who are here this evening. We do have a third colleague who has joined us and will be co-presenting, and that is Stan Edwards from the Department of Environmental Protection. So it'll be a trio tonight. I was checking out the Kensington website as I was waiting our turn, and kudos to the web developer. It's a great website of resources. I also heard about the council member who has a parrot who's out of town. One of my sons is obsessed with parrots. So if the parrot does have any visiting hours, we would love to partake in those.
I just have to say that this parrot went on a hiking adventure in the Grand Canyon. So,
oh my God.
Wow.
I think Darren found a new friend.
On somebody I'd like to give the parrot to.
Yeah.
So we do have some slides, and we definitely want to make sure we leave enough time at the end for questions. I believe someone will be presenting them or sharing them.
Matt, I believe, is going to be sharing the screen. So I guess, Matt, go ahead and get started.
Alex is actually going to share her screen for the
Okay.
presentation. So go ahead, Alex.
Matt, can you enable screen sharing for me? Okay.
Christiana Figueres and Tom Rivett-Carnac are the co-architects of the UN Paris Climate Agreement, and they wrote a great book about climate change and the need to stay optimistic in light of all the bad news that's coming our way related to climate change. So this is one of my favorite quotes from their book: "Stay firmly fixed to a vision of a world you know is possible." Next slide, please. This visual shows you at a glance where we've been in Montgomery County in terms of our community-wide greenhouse gas emissions, where we are currently, and where we want to go in the years ahead. We began measuring our community-wide greenhouse gas emissions back in 2005. And the good news is that since then, our emissions have gone down by 19%. But we still have a long ways to go if we want to be well positioned to meet our climate goals, which were set by County Council. And they are to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 80% by 2027 and 100% by 2035. And those are incredibly ambitious goals. And so that formed the beginning stages of our climate planning process. We recognized that we needed to have a strategic roadmap of actions that would have an impact in reducing our community-wide greenhouse gas emissions. Next slide, please. So in the summer of 2019, we began our climate planning process. We put out a call for community volunteers to participate in our 5 climate planning work groups. We ended up with 176 members of the community participating. They met over a period of 7 to 8 months. This was all pre-COVID. All these meetings were in person. And collectively, they came up with close to 900 recommendations for the county for actions and strategies that we should implement to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions and become more resilient to a changing climate. We also hosted a series of racial equity and social justice workshops. We brought on board a group of young people in our community who served as resilience ambassadors and held community conversations with members of their networks so that we could gather more insights from the community about what to prioritize in the climate action plan. And then in the second phase of our planning process, we turned to some technical consultants for some analytical and modeling help. And they helped to sort through the close to 900 recommendations and winnow those down to 86, which made it into the final climate action plan. And those are prioritized in terms of greenhouse gas emissions impact. They looked at the feasibility of implementing them and the level of county authority to implement as well. And the final climate action plan was released early this year in June. Next slide, please. So as a council member pointed out, it is a very thick document. It's comprehensive. There's a lot in it. But if I were to give you my best shot of summarizing 300 pages into one slide, here it is. So the climate action plan lays out a path to meet the county's zero greenhouse gas emissions goal by 2035. And these are the 8 things that we have to do to get there. The first is that we need to reduce emissions in the energy, in buildings, and in the transportation sector. And we have a slide a little bit further down in the presentation that breaks those down a little bit further for you. We also know that we must center racial equity and social justice in our work. Although climate change impacts all of us, some members of our community, and that primarily tends to be Black, Indigenous, and other people of color, tend to be disproportionately impacted by climate change, and we're seeing that over. We must also address residual emissions and carbon sequestration. Residual emissions refers to those greenhouse gas emission sources that are somewhat smaller on our emissions wedge. So that includes things like refrigerant emissions or fugitive emissions from natural gas pipelines or emissions associated with agriculture sector and wastewater sector. And even though they collectively only make up about 8% of our greenhouse gas emissions in the county, that's still 8% that we're going to need to eliminate by 2035. And we're going to need to partner with some different actors in private sector and state and federal regulators to be able to make about those changes. Carbon sequestration refers to pulling carbon out of the atmosphere, out of the air, and into the soils, into trees and wetlands and so forth. And the climate action plan includes a number of strategies around nature-based solutions for that. The fourth item relates to the fact that climate change is already here. We're already being impacted by a number of climate hazards. And so we need to identify strategies and implement those strategies so that we can become more resilient to hotter days, to more frequent extreme storms, and to flooding, for example. Doing this work is expensive, and the county resources alone are not sufficient to implement all of the actions that are outlined in the plan. And so we know that we must identify additional resources to pay for climate action. That includes tapping into and leveraging private sector resources, as well as grants. And thankfully now with the Biden administration, there is a huge push for climate action and the funding backbone for that. And so we're anxiously awaiting the passage of the infrastructure bill and other bills to enable some more of those funds to flow down to our local jurisdictions. The next item refers to climate governance. And by that, I mean the organizational backbone that is required to center climate considerations in everything that we do as a county government. So the climate action plan includes a chapter that's focused on governance and includes actions around training of staff and around climate budgeting, so that when the county decision makers are deciding what to fund, that they have information on hand about the climate impacts of various projects. and already there have been some really great partnerships that have formed from staff from across county departments working on these issues. We also know that, county government staff, we can't do it alone. Climate change is a problem that all of us collectively created. It's going to take all of us to solve. And there are a number of actions in the plan about ways that we can engage the community as partners in climate action. And finally, we need to take the next steps. The plan in and of itself, it's not self-implementing. It points us the way forward, but we need to follow through with those actions. Next slide, please. When we released the climate action plan, we actually released 2 reports at the same time. The first was the plan itself, which I laid it out on the left side. At the same time, we also issued the fiscal year 22 climate work plan. And that is our near-term action plan in terms of what are the near-term projects, activities, programs that county staff are doing actively working on this fiscal year with the existing resources and capacity. And when we added all of them up, there are 75 out of the 86 climate action plan actions moving forward this fiscal year. And our intent is to issue a quarterly progress update. And that the first quarter was just completed in October, and so we'll be posting a progress update on our website in the next few weeks. And all of our plans and activities, related reports can be found here in our URL, which is montgomerycountymd.gov/climate. And next slide, please. One of the things that our climate consultants did as part of this study is they looked at the global climate change projections, those climate models, and they downscaled those to the boundaries of Montgomery County. And they provided us with climate projections for 3 out years, 2035, 2050, and 2100. And the key takeaways from their analysis is that we can expect in the coming decades to see an increased risk of moderate, severe, and extreme drought, as well as increased number of high heat days. This calendar on the right side of the screen is a visual depiction of how hot things are likely to get under 2 different climate change scenarios. Under the most extreme global climate change scenario, we can expect to experience here in Montgomery County 2 full months a year of temperatures that exceed 95 degrees. That's by 2100. And that's not even factoring in the impact or influence of humidity, which makes things even more uncomfortable for people. And even by 2035, we can expect to experience 12 days a year of temperatures exceeding 95 degrees. We are also going to be experiencing more extreme precipitation events, as well as more precipitation totals. Already we had some record-setting flooding events this summer. That's unfortunately, that is a prelude of what's likely to come in the years and decades ahead.
Adrian, can I ask a question around that? I don't understand it, but I'm sure there's an answer for it. 2 key takeaways. One is extreme drought, and the other is extreme precipitation. How do they happen? In not to say at the same time, but how are they both risks at the same time?
Yeah, I would say that's a great question. Climate change means more extreme variations in weather. So on the one hand, we may see a lot of rain. On the other hand, we may see a lot of drought. And both things can be true under climate change. Another climate hazard that we already have been experiencing more of in the last decade is more high wind events. We have some data from the county looking at property damage as a result of high wind events, and the number of reports submitted has already gone up significantly in the most recent decade comparing to the first decade of the 2000s. Next slide, please. We have sought to center racial equity and social justice in the climate action plan in a number of ways. One thing that we did was to map using the CDC Social Vulnerability Index, locations in the county that are at increased level of social vulnerability. And there are 15 different factors that go into the CDC Social Vulnerability Index, includes, for example, families that have a single parent in the household, income levels, families that speak English less than well, and so on. And then the map on the right is another way that we pinpointed social vulnerability. The area, this census tracts highlighted in the pink, highlight areas that have an energy burden of 3% or greater. So those are households that are spending on a monthly basis 3% or more of their take-home pay on utility bills. And so these maps help us to visually understand the areas of the county that are most in need. And therefore, when we are in the process of prioritizing locations of climate resilience, climate action efforts, this is something that we must consider in our deliberations of where to locate those projects. Each of the 86 actions in the Climate Action Plan is described in some depth in the plan. And we include what we call equity enhancing measures for each action. So the example here listed in the blue box is just one example from one of the actions in the Climate Action Plan. It refers to the Community Choice Energy Program. And so we recognize that implementing climate action may have an impact on equity, and that impact may be in the positive direction or in the negative direction. And we want to make sure that when we are implementing climate actions, we are helping make things more equitable and not the reverse. And so in order to implement a program like Community Choice Energy, which Stan will go into a bit more in a minute, we need to be aware of the cost impacts and the affordability impacts to residents and look for ways to offset those, such as by providing low-income residents with subsidies so that they can afford to access more renewable energy. Next slide, please.
So when we look at the actions in the plan, Adriana mentioned that they were focused on both greenhouse gas reductions and adapting to a changing climate. So when we look at greenhouse gas reduction actions, we start with the county's greenhouse gas inventory in this chart, which is a little hard to read on this slide, but you can see there's two big bars there that dominate the slide. Those represent emissions from energy use in buildings, both residential and commercial buildings. That's the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions in the county. And the orange bar is transportation. So those two sectors make up 90% of the greenhouse gas emissions in the county. And the actions, as you might expect, then are focused on those areas. And we're going to significantly, in order to meet our climate goals, we're going to need some significant shifts in the way we use energy, how we heat and cool our homes, businesses, public buildings, how we get around the county, our general consumption patterns. And so the climate plan has 25 GHG reduction actions, again, centered on buildings, transportation, and the creation of clean energy. And I won't go into the details of all these. I'll talk a little bit about some of them in a minute, but they focus on every aspect of energy use in the county. And I'm happy to talk about any of these, but I just don't, there's a lot on these slides and I don't want to sit here and read them for you, but happy to talk about any of them if you have questions. Next slide, please. The plan also talks about adaptation and sequestration actions. Sequestration is the drawdown of carbon out of the atmosphere, and the plan identifies nature-based carbon sequestration solutions, including increasing forest and tree canopy, regenerative agriculture, retaining more carbon in soils, and 20 climate adaptation actions around protection of our water resources, drinking water resources, resilience hubs, creating places where even when we have bad weather, people can go for shelter and emergency supplies, updating our infrastructure standards to incorporate more green infrastructure, using water on site, and updating our floodplain maps. That's a big area which we need to look at. Adriana mentioned the recent flooding events we had, and there's a lot of work we need to do on making sure we understand where flooding is likely to occur, given the fact we are going to see more significant rain events like the ones we've had recently. Next slide, please. The plan also has actions related to governance. Adriana mentioned trying to make sure that the county government is focused on addressing climate change in everything that we do. Public engagement is important because, as she said, all of us have a role to play in addressing climate change. And finally has some actions at the personal level so that people can reduce their own carbon footprint, understand how to reduce their energy use in their home, and take actions that will lead to more climate resilience. Next slide, please. And so there's several key actions that are underway this year. As Adriana showed the slide, so we have, I think, was it 75 that are under some form of moving forward this year. There's some key ones here I wanted to highlight. One is Building Energy Performance Standards, which is a bill that was transmitted to the council in April of this year. It would require large commercial and multifamily buildings to meet a certain energy standard over time. I would point out that the towns of Kensington has not opted into the county's benchmarking law, which this bill will be a part of. So if you're interested in joining the rest of the county and benchmarking your larger buildings and understanding their energy use, we would be happy to talk to you about that. I think right now there are probably no buildings in Kensington that are subject to the benchmarking law, which only goes down to buildings 50,000 square feet or greater. But this proposed change to the law would make it apply to buildings 25,000 square feet or greater. And there's several along at the intersection of Knowles and Kensington and Connecticut Avenue, I know, that would probably fall under that requirement. The 2018 International Green Construction Code was recently approved by the council. It would update the building code for commercial buildings to incorporate more green features, more sustainable features, including use of renewable energy and increasing the energy efficiency of the systems in the building. So that's a good step toward what we ultimately hope will be a net zero building code in a few years down the road, so that new buildings are generating as much energy as they use. Transportation demand management is, there's executive regulations currently undergoing public comment. Sandy, I don't know if you want to say anything about that. That's right in Sandy's wheelhouse. Okay, she may be finding.
Sorry. Yeah, I had to find my mute button. Just about a year or so ago, the council adopted some new code regulations related to transportation demand management, which really refers to efforts to address the demand for road capacity in every way possible. And so things like transit use, carpooling and vanpooling, biking, walking, telework, and micromobility, which I know the town is very interested in with regard to, and bike and ped infrastructure, et cetera. So the council adopted that legislation, and now we're in the process of we had the executive regulation to implement those new code provisions out for comment, and we're evaluating the comments that have been received, and then there will be potentially some changes to the proposed executive regulations. But basically what the effort is to extend transportation demand management efforts beyond the areas that have been focused on, which are the very high activity areas of the county, beyond those to encompass more of the county's development.
Thanks, Andy. Community Choice Energy is another program we're working on. This is a law that was passed by the General Assembly in the 2021 session that would allow Montgomery County to become the energy supplier to residences and small businesses in the county. So right now in Maryland, you can get your electricity supply from your local utility, or you can go to an authorized supplier of electricity. And many people do that in order to reduce their cost or to get electricity that has a higher percentage of renewable energy. And so this would allow the county government to serve that role for all the residences and small businesses in the county. Would be enrolled in our program. You could opt out of that program and go back to a supplier of your choice, but the hope is that we will be able to offer a higher electricity with a higher renewable energy content that is required by the utilities. And there's a Public Service Commission regulatory work group that's just formed last month that's underway to help develop the regulations of that. This program probably will not launch until 2024. A lot of development that needs to go in to get it up and running, but hopefully we will have a cleaner electricity supply to the county by that time. We're also working on a couple other pieces of legislation that are in draft form right now. One that would allow the Montgomery County Green Bank to get involved in resilience activity. If you're not familiar with the Green Bank, it's an entity created by the county to help promote energy efficiency and renewable energy in the county. It helps reduce the cost of developing those projects. This would expand their purview to allow things related to resilience, flood mitigation and flood protection, things like that. We have amendments that would amend the commercial property assessed clean energy program, which allows businesses to finance, commercial buildings to finance energy improvements and renewable energy long-term through an assessment on their property tax bill. It's a very effective way to spread out the cost of a major energy or renewable energy project. And finally, a gas-powered leaf blower ban is in draft form now that we hope to send to council sometime later this fiscal year. Next slide, please.
I think this is back to me. So I won't go through all of these. This is just an additional subset of the 75 climate actions that are underway this year. There's a lot of moving pieces, but happy to answer any questions that you may have about any of these. I wanted to highlight a couple of things, maybe some that may or may not be even on this slide, but that may be some good opportunities for the town of Kensington to get plugged into the county's climate efforts. One is the climate leadership team. This is a group that meets on a bi-monthly basis for 1 hour. It includes the leadership and key staff from a dozen or more county departments and county agencies. We also invite the members, representatives from municipalities to participate. And so you're welcome to send a representative to an upcoming meeting. Our next meeting is coming up in a couple of weeks, in the first week of November. And it's just a good way to stay up to date in terms of the county's climate actions and participate in information sharing and collaborate with others on these efforts. Also, something that is happening at the state level that you may be interested in getting plugged in on is we have a very nascent Maryland climate coalition of local governments. It currently includes about 8 or so counties, as well as about a half dozen municipalities from around the state. And we are very interested in partnering with each other, not only to collectively advance climate and energy legislation before the General Assembly, but also to do some peer learning. If that is something of interest, I can add you to our roster and you can be notified of upcoming meetings. Another effort that that you might be interested in getting plugged in on, it's not quite yet up and running, but should be in the next few months, is one of the actions in the climate action plan that's called the Climate Change Communications Coalition. Essentially, that is an effort of, that will include not only county departments, but also community partners, so that we can kind of leverage each other's communications channels and identify kind of priority climate messages, so that we can all push out the same messages together and kind of have a bigger impact collectively. In our fiscal year 22 climate work plan, which is on our climate website, goes into more depth into each of the 75 actions that we have underway this year. And then the next slide, which I believe is our last one. So some key takeaways. The first is that significant effort, including budget and staff, is going to be necessary to meet our ambitious climate goals. And because of the level of effort required, we're going to need to leverage both public and private sector resources. Our climate action implementation must center racial equity and social justice in order to ensure equitable outcomes. And we're also going to need to innovate in the way that we approach community engagement and governance, so that we can be more inclusive of all voices in our diverse community. And finally, that climate action is already underway. Our sleeves are rolled up, and there's a lot of both legislative and regulatory work before council currently, and more to come. So that concludes our presentation, and we welcome any questions that you may have.
Adriana, thank you very much. That was very good. I know this has come up with our Montgomery County chapter meetings, and I hope other municipalities will be reaching out to you as well. I have a couple of questions before I just open up to the council. I think it was Stan who brought up the benchmarking. Is that for new build or is that existing buildings?
That's for existing buildings.
For existing, is there grants for people to try to?
So there's two aspects to the benchmarking building performance, or what we call BEPS law. Benchmarking is just measuring your energy use, and that's a relatively easy thing to do. There's a free online tool developed by the EPA called Portfolio Manager, and that generally larger buildings have either energy manager or a property manager that can enter the data in there to just understand what their building use is. And that's just reporting annually to the county. Once you set that up, it takes about an hour to input your energy bills. You can get that information directly from a utility. The Building Energy Performance Standards, which is the additional part we're adding to the law this year, requires energy improvements in some cases if your building doesn't meet a certain level of energy performance. And so that will, the amount of effort there and the amount of money that it might take to meet that standard depends on the efficiency of the building now. And one of the things we're focused on is providing resources to under-resourced sectors, because we know there's some building owners that won't have those resources. They're going to need technical assistance. And so those are among the things we're looking at now as we develop that program.
Okay, does that include, do you do nonprofits as well as, I mean, are they required to do it as well? I'm thinking specifically of churches.
Right, any building over 25,000 square feet as proposed, as the law is proposed right now, would be subject to this. And yeah, nonprofits and affordable housing and smaller businesses are the sectors we're particularly focused on with regard to providing resources to make sure they can achieve those standards.
Okay. And one last question. The ride on bus has been free, or with this particular group, are they advocating that ride on stay free just to encourage people to take buses?
We haven't taken a position per se in the cap with regard to free transit. There is a study, a fair equity study that is underway and has been actually submitted to the county council. And so discussions are underway about what the approach will be with regard to that. The county executive has recommended that the fare be set at $1, not at free, but at $1 to make it very affordable for most people.
Okay, thank you. Council members, do you all have any questions?
I have several.
Connor, go ahead.
All right. Starting at, I'll try to start with the easiest ones first. Which ironically is going to the end of your presentation and moving backwards. But one of the things you talked about was an electric vehicle purchasing co-op. So the town just got approved several, I think 4 in total electric vehicle charging stations, 2 of which we are locating at our town hall, both for public use, but also I think for future planning, some of our smaller vehicles, we might be able to transition over to EV. If there's a snippet on that, or how do we get more information on the electric vehicle co-op, purchasing co-op? Because as you can imagine, as a small municipality, we have to find another bid or another contract to go out. If the county's going to create a co-op and maybe there's a contract, and the easier you can make it for us to find those vehicles and purchase those vehicles, the easier I think it is for small municipalities to make that change.
So I have a couple of things to share with you in that regard. One is that the EV purchasing co-op that was referenced in the slide that you were looking at is for the private sector. It's for small businesses and for residents. That's not to say that I suppose we could, once we get that up and running, have it be also available to the smaller municipalities. But I'm thinking that you probably would be better served by the electric vehicle purchasing efforts that the county itself has been making. We've already acquired quite a few EVs. I don't know the contractual arrangements for that, but our Department of General Services is the one that's handling that. And so you could probably fairly readily, I would think, ride the contract because it's another public sector contract. But we can get you in touch with the people who are handling that in the Department of General Services, and you could follow up on that sooner rather than later. But with regard to the EV purchasing co-op, we went out with an RFP through the Council of Governments, again, to make it easier for others to ride this if it works well, which we hope it will. And so that is, as I said, designed to, through the power of collective purchasing of quantity, to work toward getting better pricing for residents and small businesses to be able to buy EVs, and looking at both leasing and purchasing, actually, even though it says purchasing. So we're just getting up and running with that. That contract was just awarded, and we are going to have a kickoff meeting within the next week or so with that contractor. And a big part of that is going to be working with the original equipment manufacturers, with the dealers, et cetera. So we can explore whether that's another opportunity for municipalities. But like I say, I think it might find a quicker turnaround and maybe better pricing. I don't know, with regard to the public sector.
Sandy,
Perfect.
let me jump
Sure.
in just real quick. Sandy, does those include trucks or just vehicles?
The county has been
Smaller vehicles.
purchasing heavier vehicles as well. I don't think we have any super heavy duty vehicles, but we do have some pickup trucks, I believe, that we have at least planned to purchase. I'm not sure they're actually in the fleet at this point, but we can get you more information on that, like I say.
Yeah, I mean, our pickup trucks double as snow removal too, so they have to be pretty powerful. So that's just, I'm sure the technology is on its way. So if it hasn't quite reached it, it will.
Right. Yeah, as you've seen the ads about, some of the Ford 150s and things like that are out there already. So,
Right.
but let me follow up with you about who to get in touch with. I mean, I know it is, but I'll send you that information.
Okay, Connor, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Nope, thanks. Next question. So one of the things that our development review board does when we look at commercial developments in our CRT and CRN zones, but CRT zones is we've been very interested not only in the efficiency of the building, but really rooftops. So there's a couple of different, I don't want to call them competing, but there's different options that a building could implement for its roof. You hear of green roof systems. The most basic, I guess, is white, painting white to reflect the sun and try and lower energy. But then solar. What is the best method as far as reducing or helping the county meet these energy goals? Green roof versus solar. I mean, if we're trying to talk with the developers that are proposing these buildings, and obviously the other use is they try to activate them, and then there's some mix. But is one preferable over another?
Yeah, I think that's going to be very site specific. Some building rooftops have a lot of mechanical equipment on top of them. Some building rooftops are utilized for public spaces. So it's hard to answer that question definitively. I think a designer would look at each one of those options. I would say, and also in many places we have not a lot of room for stormwater controls. So in those cases, a green roof might be the best option because it allows you to retain some stormwater. But again, that's going to be very site specific. The reflective roof, I would say, would be the last option if you can't do either a green roof or solar. But again, it's going to depend on the characteristics of the building.
Okay. Two more questions. I didn't want to monopolize. One is forest conservation in the tree canopy law. So this is a two-part question. So I'll see how that was uniquely tricky. I slipped in a second question. Forest conservation, when there are applicants who are redeveloping, I don't say it happens all the time, but we do more than I thought. You will see waivers for the forest conservation, and all of a sudden, trees are felled to make for development. And I know there's, especially as the county is looking to upzone and bring in additional density for housing. is the county balancing trying to preserve forests and trees, and yet another department is over there giving waivers to cut them down to build more density?
Yeah. So that's that's the constant struggle that we have related to trees. I will say that in general, neither the forest conservation law or the tree canopy law or the county's roadside tree law, 3 laws which apply to different sets of tree and forest resources, in general prevent the removal of trees. What they do is try to mitigate for the loss of trees. And depending upon how many you cut, how many you might have on the property to begin with, what room you have, there would be different mitigation actions required. And in some cases, it's payment of a fee in lieu so that trees are planted elsewhere in the county. And that's sometimes not a satisfactory answer for people who see the trees disappear off the property that's being developed. But in some cases, that's the only option. So there is that constant sort of tug of war between allowing someone to develop the property, even if that means taking down trees, and requiring them to mitigate. And I just say I've been involved in tree issues for a number of years, and I don't think we have a satisfactory answer because different people have different views on what we should do. Should we require or prevent the removal of the trees to begin with? That runs counter to some other objectives, and so it's not an easy question to answer. And I know that's probably not a satisfactory answer. But
no, but I think it's a realistic that we have competing priorities. And I'm not an arborist. The other thing is you could save an old growth tree only to find out it's completely diseased and falls down the next month, right? I mean, there's, so I will leave with my last question, which is I grew up in the Midwest. I was talking with the mayor earlier about the difference between being on the East Coast where, land is pretty much developed, and growing up in the Midwest where if you wanted a different house, you just moved 4 blocks north and you could build a brand new house. But one thing that they did have there that I wonder when it will finally come out here are smart traffic signal systems, right? Real time can depict the flow of traffic. So if you look at Connecticut Avenue, all of ours in the county are on timed systems. They evaluate the backflows and they set the timing for different times of day. But in the middle of the night, if I'm coming counter to the major road where I would have a red and it senses, well, there is no traffic, it just automatically switches, right? There's no sense, it's all done on sensors. Has it ever evaluated smart traffic signaling systems to help gain roadway efficiencies, which obviously then reduces GHG and all the, you can go down the line of the potential benefits?
So I'm sure you expect me to know the answer to that.
I don't, but if you have it, I'll take it.
But I can find out.
Yeah, I think that DOT does have a very small scale application of that. I believe it's around Montrose Road, or at least a portion of it. But it's not widely applied throughout the county. I think what prevents it from more wider application is the cost of doing so.
Exactly.
And of course,
retrofitting is going to be very expensive. Again, when you're building the roads from dirt, other advantages to these systems were when emergency vehicles came along, it would trigger all of the lights in their direction of path. It also sends a counter signal to everybody in their way. There's a second light. You people who haven't been to the Midwest haven't seen these. There's another light on the light bar. It's white, solid white or flashing white. And you're taught that it tells you which direction the emergency vehicle is coming from, even if you can't hear it yet. So it indicates to you that you're going to be held at this red until that emergency vehicle goes through. It's really goofy if you've never seen it, but it's really effective once you know what it is.
I would say
we do have some. Go ahead.
I was just saying the other thing that complicates this, of course, is many of the roads in the county are state roads. So Connecticut Avenue is a prime example.
Yeah,
it's the state's responsibility to maintain the traffic signals, and I know that DOT in Montgomery County DOT and the state highway administration work closely together on a lot of things, but there's complications with that. You can expect.
Sure. And the other thing I was going to say is we do have some advanced technologies that we have been testing, such as transit signal prioritization, which is similar to what you're describing for emergency vehicles, which enables the buses to travel and actually queue jump or pass by intersections. But there are issues with cross traffic which in the Midwest, and I'm also a Midwesterner, by the way, but may not in the areas you're thinking of be as much of an issue because the traffic volumes aren't as great for some of those, side streets and east-west or north-south or whatever it happens to be. So those can create some issues in terms of managing traffic signals, but we are testing and we have been doing some things like that.
Thank you all very much.
All right, Connor, Darren, I don't know which one wants to go first.
Nate or Darren?
Oh, sorry, Nate or Darren.
No, I'll go last. You can go Darren.
Okay, Darren, go ahead.
All right. Look, I want to start out by saying I understand the demographics of the county that I'm in. I understand the limitations of the county that I'm in. But, I feel like we could be a leader here. And when I see a climate action plan that defines carbon-free energy to include nuclear, but their definition of clean energy excludes nuclear and biomass, I question the seriousness of our commitment to addressing climate change. I hear our interest in addressing environmental justice and the disproportionate impact that climate change has on our minority communities. But then I look at a 300-page, 86 recommendation climate change policy that ignores nuclear. We have two communities in our area, Tacoma Park and Garrett Park, that are nuclear-free zones. And that was kind of cute when we were in the middle of the Cold War. But right now, we're in an era where if you believe the science, we're supposed to believe that New York, Miami, Shanghai, Mumbai are at risk. And yet we are fighting climate change in the most inefficient way conceivable. And to exclude nuclear from it just seems insane, honestly. And in fact, I think we're so unserious about fighting climate change that we ought to be adopting the position of Bjorn Lomborg and Michael Schellenberger and saying, give it up, guys. It's coming. We should focus on adaptation. And I mean, to see gas-powered leaf blowers being presented as a measure to address climate change, to me just illustrates how unserious we're being. Just acknowledge the math, acknowledge the science. We aren't going to get here if we sit here in one of the richest counties in the country and consider 86 recommendations for how we're going to incrementally lower our contribution to climate change. Whatever we do is going to be dwarfed by the 100 largest cities in India. And so for us not to take a leadership position and say, we can't do it without nuclear, and we need to do nuclear, just seems like giving up a platform that we have. So I understand I'm in a minority position here, but I think I understand math and science a lot better than a lot of the people that put this plan together. That's all.
Okay, I'm not sure if I heard a question or if it was more of a comment. But
It sounded more like a comment to me, but
why does the plan exclude nuclear? Why does the plan not address nuclear as a pathway out of this, both for us as a leadership and for the country as a whole and the world?
Yeah, I think the focus of the plan is on the things that the county is principally on the things the county has control of doing. I don't think the county has a very good ability, other than perhaps a bully pulpit, as you might suggest, to advocate for nuclear as one of the primary energy sources. And I think I acknowledge what you're saying about if you're talking about carbon emissions, that nuclear is a carbon-free source. I would suggest we would have an extremely difficult time citing a nuclear plant in Montgomery County. We have a difficult time citing things far less intrusive and controversial than a nuclear plant. So I think in the plan, we tried to focus on those things where we felt like we could have an impact. None of them are easy. I would suggest that we are, in fact, taking a leadership role. I mean, BEPS, we will be the first county in the nation to pass a BEPS law. We were the first county with a benchmarking law. We have, pretty advanced transportation demand management policies. We're buying electric buses. We're doing lots of things that are a leadership position. This is a huge issue. Wasn't created overnight. We're not going to solve it overnight. The math isn't on our side. I would agree with you on that. But I think to focus on things like nuclear in lieu of some of the things where we do have the ability to set policies or adopt programs, I think would be short-sighted.
I would say I would give two quick replies to that. First of all, the plan in its definitions excludes nuclear from clean energy. And that in itself is a statement. It acknowledges that nuclear is a carbon-free energy, which it most certainly is. And it could have acknowledged that nuclear is a clean energy. And second of all, the county is a huge purchaser and user of electricity. Just as we could offer and encourage the purchase of electricity from wind and solar sources, we could encourage and mandate the purchase of electricity from nuclear sources. So I thank you for coming. I appreciate your explanation of the 86 recommendations that we have. I just can't let the moment pass without saying it. I think we're doing it with one arm tied behind our back. And if it's as an existential threat as we portray it, we ought to acknowledge that and implement strategies that recognize the magnitude of the threat.
Okay, thank you, Darren. Nate?
Okay, so I think I'll try to end it on a positive note. So contrary to what Darren just said, I actually think that the plan is aggressive. I think it's doing what it needs to do to address, the areas where we have the most significant need for mitigation, which is in the buildings sector and the transport sector. So, my questions are more about what we can do to help promote that in terms of solutions. So Connor mentioned the development review board. So we have a development review board that projects come before, and we give advice, we make suggestions, and so on. One of the things that, as Connor alluded to, that we mentioned in those meetings is around green building standards. Following IGCC plus, we're encouraging LEED Silver designation pursuit and those sorts of things. So I guess two questions is, it's hard for where we sit, at least where I sit, in advocating for developers to pursue those through the development review board process. And then when they go onto the county for the approvals, where really they should be emphasizing their efforts, especially, I understand the difference between IGCC and LEED certification. And, we've suggested that they go at least LEED Silver, like I said, but now there's the building electrification requirements, the green bank, other things that are out there, the electrification incentives and standards for buildings. Is there something that we could have in terms of maybe a toolkit or some advice for how to steer the developers in the direction so they can pursue these programs, access the grants, understand the regulations, when they come up? And these are happening all the time nowadays because there are a lot of developments that are ongoing. So that's one question, and how they relate to one another, and can we have some guidance for how to advise or push and advocate for the best programs and solutions. So maybe I'll leave it there and I have maybe 2 or 3 questions after that. Thanks.
Yeah. Sure. So one of the things that we recognize in putting forward the Building Energy Performance Standards, or BEPS policy, is that many building owners, managers, developers don't have access to technical information to understand, as you have suggested, what is the right pathway to take in order to reduce the environmental footprint of my building, and also ways to fund that. work? If it is incrementally more expensive than building a quote unquote traditional building, how would they pay for that? So one of the resources, the Green Bank is a resource that the county developed a number of years ago to help in that area. And we're proposing to expand that, either expand the role that Green Bank plays or develop a corollary entity that can provide those resources that you described. So what, and different buildings that come into this process at different places, right? Some are very sophisticated, have staff that can manage energy programs, develop renewable energy resources, and others are starting with almost no resources and no understanding. And so what we want to make sure is that this resource, whatever it ends up looking like, has entry points for people at different levels. And so that's something we're working on that we'll be developing over the next year as we develop the policy and the regulations to implement the standard. But we recognize that is very important.
Yeah, especially since the commercial sector is over half of the building's emissions, right?
Yeah.
So I think that'd be really helpful to have as we engage with the developers. So the other question is similarly on the, oh, sorry.
I was going to say, one of the things we do have in the county is we do have some very sophisticated building owners and developers and some very some very efficient buildings. And one of the things we hope to do is use those as examples and case studies of what can be done. And all our policies are moving toward, so we've had a tax credit for green building in the county for a number of years, and it used to be focused on certifications, the LEED certifications prominently that you mentioned. So if you develop to a certain level of LEED certification, you got a tax credit, and a very generous tax credit for commercial buildings. We've reconfigured that tax credit now so that it focuses first on energy efficiency, and you have to do a certain level of energy efficiency above standard code in order to get the tax credit. And then if you also do a building certification like LEED, you can get an additional incremental amount on that. So we're changing things, our incentives, to try to focus more on reduction of energy use and greenhouse gas emissions.
No, that's good to know the incentive structures like that, because obviously efficiency is the biggest bang for the buck. But I think someone mentioned the storm. I think it was you actually, green roofs and stormwater management where we sit. That's a huge issue too. So we don't want to downplay that part of the LEED certification process. So we want them to work together. But also from the residents' perspectives, is there something that we can be doing to kind of shepherd them towards resources or programs that you mentioned? If you have, a checklist or something that we could help to give to our residents and put it on our website or something.
Yeah. So a couple of things in response to that. One, a big part of the climate plan focuses on engagement with the public. And so we have a number of different actions related to developing more robust communications with the public about what they can do. There is a section in the plan for what can I do section that can walk people through things they can do around the home to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. There are tools already available for people. We have a program called Montgomery Energy Connection, which is there's a foundational website. If you just Google Montgomery Energy Connection, you'll find this website. It helps people find resources to improve the efficiency of their home, to learn more about renewable energy, lower their energy costs. And we partner with a lot of organizations around the county to develop that program. So I would encourage you to look at Montgomery Energy Connection. There are currently incentives available from utilities to do energy efficiency work on your homes. This Empower Maryland programs, you may be familiar with those. The same program that provides rebates on light bulbs and appliances in local retailers also provides rebates for doing an upgraded heating and air conditioning system, increasing the energy, the tightness of your building envelope, putting in more insulation, things like that. So again, in the same way we want to make sure that these resources are available for commercial buildings, we want to make sure they're more accessible for residents as well. Montgomery Energy Connections is a start to that, but we recognize we have a long way to go. Yeah. So one thing I'd point out is my colleague is chatting me on the side here that October is Energy Action Month. And through Montgomery Energy Connection, we're doing light bulb swaps at local libraries. Again, Google Montgomery Energy Connection, you can find that. And that's we use light bulb swaps. It seems like a small thing, change out an incandescent light bulb for an LED light bulb, but it's kind of the entry point in the way we can talk to people about energy efficiency. And we've done that in lots of different places, including brew pubs around the county and
Well,
Anywhere we can put it.
October's a busy month because it's
It is a busy
Walktober
month.
too.
Right.
So,
Yes,
so and Sandy knows very well.
yes.
So no, I appreciate the things that Adriana pointed out for that we can do, you know, getting involved with these coalitions and so on. But is there anything also that we could do in terms of thinking about piloting? I know that, especially on the adaptation front, I know our biggest vulnerability is stormwater, and I think you're hearing that all over the county. I suggested a few times we explore nature-based solutions, not directly with the direct development of commercial property per se, but you know, how we channel water into areas of large green space or public use, and how we can, you know, access any grants or things like that that could help to facilitate that. And then I'll say the last question just really quickly is just, we had a presentation from the Maryland Main Street program at the state level, and one of the requirements was that we become a sustainable community program through their Department of Housing and Community Development. And we didn't quite understand the relationship between that program, what we're doing to advocate as a county for the climate action plan, and then there's the University of Maryland and MML sponsored program called Sustainable Maryland Certified. So I was just curious if you could tell us which one we should be pursuing most aggressively, because we are, as Tracy will remind you in a minute, very small staff, very small town. So what, you know, what can we be doing on that front? And thank you very much. I appreciate all of your work and your help.
I have to admit, I'm not familiar with those different permutations of sustainable communities programs that you have just mentioned. If you want to share with us some of the links, we can take a look at them and just kind of give us our 2 cents in terms of kind of, you know, our thinking on those. I welcome your interest in piloting adaptation strategies. I think that a stormwater project, like you mentioned, channeling stormwater to a public location, I think that would be wonderful. And I think that as potential federal funds, infrastructure funds become available to local jurisdictions, that might be a funding source that you may be able to look into and tap into.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Stan.
I was just going to say, I'm with Adriana. I'm not fully familiar with all those programs. I would say that there are, one of the best ways maybe is to contact some other municipalities of similar size. Tacoma Park, I know, is a little bigger than Kensington and perhaps more resources, but they did the Sustainable Maryland program, and so they may have some lessons learned there that they could help with, and we can put you in touch with their sustainability manager if that's helpful to talk about that program. But we certainly understand the capacity issue, because we face that every day, trying to decide which ball we're going to keep in the air, or which of the mini balls we're going to keep in the air at one time. So we certainly appreciate that. Yeah.
Well, I'm a firm believer in setting, you know, a reasonable amount of goals in order to at least be successful, because if you put too many balls in the air, they tend to just all fall down and then you don't get anywhere. So, but yeah, no, I thank you for your presentation. It was very enlightening, and I very much appreciate you taking the time this evening to meet with us. So does anybody in the audience, I know that we don't have too many people out. Jack, do you have a question? Go ahead.
Actually, it's 2 comments rather than questions. I think it was a good presentation. In order to reduce our carbon emission, we have to do all of these things. In particular, I agree with Darren. We need to include nuclear. And by the way, this isn't new. The United States currently has about 100 nuclear power plants, which provide about 20% of the total energy, electrical energy for the country.
Okay.
We need to increase that. I also agree with Connor about the traffic lights and the technology, and like to go one step further. Something that we could do right now would be to synchronize the light at Connecticut Knolls with the light at Connecticut and Flyers Mill. It's very frustrating to sit in northbound Connecticut, to sit at Knolls to get a green light, and I can't go because the cars in front of me are stopped because they have a red light. And by the time they get a green light, I have a red light, so I can't go. And you have to go another cycle. That means everybody spends 2 cycles instead of 1 cycle to go through these 2 intersections. They're only a couple blocks apart.
Okay, I know you've been asking for that for a while, Jack. So
Yes, well,
and I know MC Dot has their reasonings because they do control the lights. They may talk to SHA, but they pretty much control the light sequencing. But we can ask them again.
and the fire department has control of the lights because they can put a red light when they.
Yes, they do.
And they do that every time they open the door, even if they just back the engine into the driveway to wash it.
They've tried to be better about that. They don't abuse it as much like they used to.
I agree, but there needs to be a mechanism to then bring the lights back into synchronization in a couple of cycles.
Agree.
I'm
Okay.
assuming you've already raised this with DOT, with the county
Yes, we
DOT?
haven't, but it's been a while since we've raised it, so we can certainly ask them to look at that again. So, does anybody else have a question in the audience? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands. So council, are you good? And Connor, I know put some email addresses in the chat, so we can certainly forward those to you if you're not able to get them.
So I just want to say that Sandy will be joining us next month too.
Yes, talk
Yeah,
about
you
bike.
get to see me again, right?
That's good. Yeah, thank you for letting us postpone that. It's don't want to keep people here too late. So anyway.
Yeah, one comment I would make is that it'd be worth thinking through to the extent that the town I know is very interested in bike ped safety and mobility, the impacts of some of the speeding up of traffic if signals are well coordinated. So those are, just like the forest conservation issue that we were discussing earlier, there are yin and yang aspects to all of these things.
Well, we've also found too, we don't get a lot of these, not to be with the bike share, but we don't get a lot of improvements without the redevelopment. That's when a lot of these improvements happen.
Mhm.
So,
Right.
and I understand that the county building in Wheaton won quite a few awards. Is that correct for
Yes,
building?
that's a LEED Platinum building, first government LEED Platinum building, I think, in the eastern part of the US, as I recall. Yeah. So.
Are they able to put money in the budget to refit some of our older buildings, particularly schools, some of our older schools, to bring them up to be more
I'll let
efficient?
Adriana address that. I know schools is part of our climate leadership team, so.
Yeah, and they certainly have ambitious to do so. As Sandy mentioned, they're a part of our climate leadership team. They're doing a lot around their footprint. They just released a request for proposals for rooftop and canopy solar at 8 different schools. So the gears are turning. I think that more funding, more resources, if they were made available, that they would allow the school system to accelerate their efforts even more. So that's the limiting factor.
I have seen a lot of the canopy solar systems. I know IKEA put in a bunch of them in Prince George's County, and I saw one up in Rockville recently near King Farm. And so you're seeing those, which makes perfect sense. They sit out in full sun, and it's great to be able to park under them to keep your car cool. So see more and more of those. All right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for spending the evening with us and bringing the information.
Thank you for having us.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thanks
Thank you.
again so much.
Andy, we'll see you next month.
Yep, see you then.
All right.
Good night.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Good night. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, so this is, we're still in from the council. So the mayor and town council. So Connor, do you want to start with any other additional reports you'd like to give?
Yes, I have 2. First is the property at 10619 Connecticut Avenue, which is the Huggins property, but it's also where Hawkins is right now at Pliers Mill in Connecticut. They did just file their notice of application for that property. So I imagine we will be seeing finally some movement forward. This is with the county, not with the town of Kensington, but they have filed for their development there. As a reminder, that development is proposed to be a one-story commercial property, 2 buildings with a feature to connect them, about 11,000 square foot. They talked about maybe 5 to 6 business, bays for fast casual dining and other such businesses. Per the application or notice of application, right now, tentative, the public hearing is being scheduled for February 3rd, 2022, but that obviously could change. If we find out that it does, we will do our best to push that information out to the community.
Does the DRB want to meet on that and make any recommendations for that pending hearing?
Yeah, I was going to request from the developer, actually, I think it would be good, especially if we can do it with Zoom, to do another meeting just to make sure that we have the most current version of that plan. They can give any more updates, and that way we can be refreshed on it in case anything has changed with the applicant, so that, if we are looking to submit testimony or a letter one way or another on that property, we can do so. As a reminder, the DRB has previously met on this property March 18th of 2021, and the town council received a presentation from the developer April 12th of 2021, and then subsequently, about 2 weeks later, as an action out of that meeting, sent a letter of general support, just because it's very early on. There's not as much detail in the. So I would like to go back and make a request that they come back to the DRB and just share exactly what the plan is that they submit when it's fully, the application is fully in, and then we can make a recommendation to the council for any sort of letter or action.
And can you explain whether this is a project that would allow technical staff to review the design and make any comments on?
Yeah, so the county, the way that they are filing the site plan, the county will have the ability to look at this plan and we'll go over the plan for everything, as we've seen in other projects, everything from the architectural design, the building layout, the function of the building. One of the things that they had submitted previously, which is drawn in the site plan, is a drive-through. They have always stated that the drive-through would be for a bank, not for fast food. We had heard from county that they would never approve a fast food drive-through, that a bank could work only because they have a much lower queuing standard, the number of cars that would actually queue up. So ingress, egress, if there's going to be an easement to the 7-Eleven property for a secondary movement out to Metropolitan Avenue, all of those things are going to go under technical review by the county, to include stormwater management and all of the other requirements for the site. So this will go through a normal rigorous review by the county. As a reminder for people who might just be getting engaged, the Development Review Board will look at this on behalf of the town and make recommendations to the county council, or sorry, to the town council. And depending, one of those might be that they come before the town council again, so we'll have a chance. But final authority over the project resides with the county, because the town does not have zoning.
And they will be required to do a traffic study, is that correct?
They will.
Okay. And I know we just had the meeting with the climate action parent from the county. I should have asked this question. Are they going to be required to do anything that the? Well,
as I understand it from the climate action, all new projects will have some aspect of review for standards. And in looking through that, there's, you get a point, it's like a point system under the IGGC. This project, though, is only 11,000 square feet. So when he was talking about current built buildings that are at 25, this is to give you a sense, this is, a relatively small commercial building. But I know one of our, Nate alluded to it from the DRB, one of our pushes with the development that has been coming forward is to truly understand their environmental impact, to get a sense of how they might use their roof. Is it a green roof? Can we advocate for solar? We advocated for solar with the what is now Silver Creek Senior Living, and they are now installing solar on their roof. A number of other roofs, we're looking for stormwater retention that Stan had mentioned, or some sort of green roofing system. So this is where, going through the IGGC standards and then helping to advocate on behalf of the town of what we would like to see to help meet the climate action kind of goals, but also to, enhance the building in an environmentally sound way for the town's benefit as well.
Okay, and could we consider any of that an amenity, a public amenity?
Yeah, those are all considered community benefits. Obviously, it's one end of the spectrum is just high quality design, open space, public space, but then putting in some of these are also community benefits.
Okay, because I know on the Walktober event, we were talking about that intersection because it's such a, it's not a complete failure, but it's close to it. At Metropolitan, Concord, the shopping center and Flyers Mill kind of come together. But this project is so small, it's not going to kick in the requirement to redo that whole intersection, unlike if it had been a much bigger project. Okay.
Right. Second update is attainable housing strategies. So this is a secondary strategy to the Thrive Montgomery 2050. The planning board had a meeting on October 7th. It was work session number 4 for attainable housing. The focus of this, each of these work sessions has kind of introduced either a more detailed discussion and a need for the planning board to signal what direction it wanted to go on a topic, or introducing new topics. And this one introduced a new type of housing, that would be permissible under the attainable housing strategy. It's what is referred to as a courtyard. What are they? Cottage courtyards. Yeah, cottage courtyard. So the idea is on a single plot of land, or if you aggregated a few together, you could build multiple one-story housing structures, but separated, detached housing structures. So the idea being, if you think form and scale of what accessory dwelling units have been, 1,200 square feet or less, but permitting you to build multiples of those on, one lot, depending on what the size of that lot is. So the idea is they would be very close together. If you achieve a certain level of density and on the lot, they would actually look at reducing things like setbacks between these, where they've been used out west or in like Charleston, South Carolina. Some of these are no more than 5 or 6 feet apart from one another. The idea being they don't have a shared common wall like a townhouse, but they do reduce the space between the side setbacks such that each of the dwelling units or structures are no further apart than maybe 5 or 6 feet. So they introduced this. It was something that the planning board was receptive to. They then talked about a few other things. One was reducing parking minimums, especially in the attainable housing high priority housing districts, of which the town is fully one of them. So as a reminder, the priority housing districts are anything within a 1 mile straight line radius of a metro stop, Purple Line, MARC train, bus rapid transit, or 500-foot line from River Road inside of the Beltway and all of Connecticut Avenue. So doesn't matter, we're within 1 mile. The whole town is within the priority housing district. Within that priority housing district, a couple of the other things that the attainable housing strategy is recommending, and the planning board is highly supportive of, is the plan on its face. Duplexes and triplexes would be permitted by right everywhere in the R60, R90, R40, R200 zones. But if you are in a priority housing district, again, the town is within fully, every address is within it, they would also permit a quadplex or a fourplex by right, meaning it does not have to go through a site plan. It does not have to go through any additional review. It can just be built by right by the property owner. So as of right now, there is another work session planned for November 4th. So previously, and if you looked at previous copies of the paperwork, they talked about a work session on October 21st. That is not happening. They have pushed it to November 4th. At the November 4th one, they will take up parking requirements. They will take up the topic of subdivision to accommodate triplexes, quadplexes, small apartments. They will take up affordability, how to actually get these attainable housing units to be affordable. And I will say it was an interesting work session to hear planning board members discuss and then acknowledge that right now the types of townhomes that are being built, as opposed to being missing middle and attainable, the types of products that are coming online are $800,000-$900,000 or $1 million townhomes, elevators, 4 stories, rooftops. We have a similar project within the town. It meets the requirement of being missing middle. It brings a different style of housing other than single family home or apartment. But the idea of attainability, listening to the planning board members, have to realize that it's not generating attainable housing. And so part of what they are slated to talk about in the work session number 5 on the 4th of November is what incentives can the planning board and the county council put in place to try and create units that are more attainable, that are lower in price. So some of the things they've talked about are, incentivizing to try and create more of the style of housing that is a bigger building with many, many small units, with the average square footage being 1,200 square feet per unit or less. Some at 800, 900 square feet. So if you're interested in this, I encourage you to watch the next work session on November 4th.
One thing that's always missing in these discussions about, especially duplexes, quadplexes, and triplexes, is that there's going to be, like the MPDUs, there's going to be an HOA fee tacked on to whatever you spend, either on rent. The owner is going to be adding that to your rent, or you're going to have to pay it if it's a condo association. So that's always seems to be missing. And that's part of the failure of the MPDUs in a lot of the apartments that they're building in Bethesda is they can't discount the condo fees. So you may get a discount on the actual purchase of the condo, but you are paying the same fee that everybody else is paying based probably on your square footage. So, and a lot of people just can't afford that. Yeah.
Another thing that, just interesting given the other topics on the agenda tonight with the climate action plan is, what I heard in the discussion of the planning board was also, we talked about competing priorities on commercial development, but this acknowledgement that, we value green space and we value yards and we value tree canopy, but in many parts of the county, what this plan is doing is incentivizing you to build to the maximum lot envelope of your property. That in order to get the full return on, the value of your land, it is build as far out front and back. And what it ends up leaving you with, and the town works on title restrictions, but in some parts of the county, you go by and where it used to be these post-war homes, Cape Cods and bungalows, when those are replaced, the size of the house that goes on it just seems overwhelming. I know that, at one phase there was the terms McMansion, right, that was being used. But what they're really talking about is a max out, that the full building envelope of that lot is being maxed out. And so the result is that, there isn't a yard. And I get it, not everybody wants to take care of a yard, but that has other that triggers other impacts. It triggers stormwater issues, it triggers neighbor relations issues, it triggers, but at the end of the day, by maxing out the envelope, they're also maxing out the square footage, which also means they are building bigger units, which also means it may not result in as many attainable and certainly not affordable units of housing.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Connor.
Yep.
Darren, did you want to report anything?
I don't know that I have anything to report other than, we continue to, hopefully maybe at the next meeting, we will have a proposal for a code revision to address side yard setbacks that, will address the bay window problem that we faced. And as we look at maybe protecting ourselves against some of the unintended consequences of Thrive and the erosion of the R60 zone, we might want to consider in the future hardwiring some of the setbacks and height and density and lot coverage restrictions, just so that we if we choose to opt into it, we can do so purposefully rather than letting the county drag us in without giving it some thought.
Okay, well, I think we're going to plan a work session on that probably in November to discuss. Sue Ellen's looking into what other municipalities have done, and so we'll discuss that at a work session, and then hopefully be able to put together some legislation to present, and then to have a hearing, and then to adopt.
To piggyback on something that Darren just said, and it was another part that is actually supposed to be discussed at the November 4th work session, but it has supposed to have been discussed at previous work sessions, and it just hasn't materialized yet. But I know the report was the county has worked with DPS. Now they're starting to work on what's called a pattern book. That's another big thing out of the Attainable Housing Strategy, is that the county will develop a pattern book, which is going to be a mandatory document that you have to abide by, that will tell you exactly what is permitted. Setbacks, heights, density will be a mathematical equation based on the total lot area set by setbacks and height. And I think, to Darren's point, what we need to look at as a council is, the town has, it started as a garden community. We place a lot of value in the things that we write about green space and yards and tree canopy. And so we have yet to see the pattern book, because I think, if that's going to be the governing document that depicts how the form and fit of lots will be determined for attainable housing, that will be the first roadmap we get of what the county is willing to permit. And then for us to start a discussion of how do we want that to apply within the town.
Okay, well, and you also have to worry about future zoning text amendments that somebody decides to put out there. A lot of times without our even knowledge that, that it's been done, and then the consequences. Yes. So, yeah.
And we're not going to have a lot of time to react to this. They alluded to the fact that they are already drafting the ZTA for the Attainable Housing Strategy. So they believe they'll be done with the Attainable Housing Strategy by the end of November, and therefore they should be able to introduce the ZTA to enact all of this, or at least send it to the county council, presumably by December, to schedule a public hearing. So it's coming very quickly.
Okay. Nate?
Yeah, just a few updates on the pedestrian bicycling issues. But before that, Connor, I had a quick question that you didn't get a chance to ask about the Higgins property.
Huggins, not Higgins.
Did I
That
say?
one.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, no, Huggins.
Yeah.
Excuse me. But actually, we should be calling it by its new name, right?
This is right. Crossroads of Kensington.
Crossroads of Kensington. So the Crossroads of Kensington came up in our also came up in the Walktober event yesterday. Was someone asked about whether they're going to be required to bury the power lines and or deal with that. And then I couldn't tell in the site plan. The other thing was about whether the bike lane on Connecticut has disappeared from the conversation, because I couldn't see that either on the site plan.
So they're not required to, per the county, again, we don't control that, but the county has said they are not going to require them to bury the power lines because it's such a small lot. However, the development group, or the applicant group that owns this site, there is one member of it that is also involved in the ownership of the site behind it. And he acknowledged that maybe, down the road, it would make sense to aggregate and, consider this a phase 1 to a larger phase 2, but, that could be a decade away. But at that time, he acknowledged that, if the 7-Eleven and Baskin Robbins and the storage unit on that side of the street. If that property were to go up for redevelopment, then yeah, triggering a bearing of the power lines for the whole swath would make sense. And county, when we talked to them, more or less said, yeah, that's exactly how they see it too. There's a lot. So where did the bike lane go? There's a whole lot of things that are kind of up in the air, because there are other improvements like a dedicated right turn lane for northbound Connecticut to turn right and go east on Pliers Mill that the MCDOT had offered up as a short-term mitigation to our traffic problems along Connecticut Avenue. This was, 5 years ago, that have subsequently now, because of Vision Zero and some of the other ways that they're looking at, like, these things are all seemingly gone. They don't like dedicated right turn lanes anymore. So presumably, well, MCDOT said, yeah, that's still on our list. Planning's like, yeah, that's not gonna happen. So the county, those things need to get reconciled. The dedicated bike lane, I did not see on theirs either, but, and you'll have to remind me, you may know better. Is it on the east side, the northbound directional side of Connecticut, or the southbound? It's on the northbound?
Yeah, I think that's where they proposed it.
Okay.
I think that's where they proposed it, and then carrying over to Metropolitan.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, it's something.
And
that
there is something that neither one of us is going to be able to read.
Yeah,
it has a bunch of lines that could be anything from stormwater to electricity to. So again, that is a question that when asking the applicant to come back to a DRB, I think it would be good to just highlight a couple of things we want to make sure their presentation covers.
Yeah. Okay.
Can we
Thanks, Tony.
post that site plan, Matt, on the website?
Not yet, no.
I said, can we?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and I don't know that it's officially been filed yet. Has it, Matt? Did you get, this was
well,
just a notice that they were going to make the application.
I think it is official.
Okay, because I checked on Friday and it wasn't on.
It wasn't
on the
there?
website. It wasn't on the
Okay.
county site yet.
Because Lurch Early had forwarded it. I got one at home. I don't know why. I mean,
Right.
I'd been on the call and signed up for it, and then we got one at the town office.
Right, but that's and I got one as well. That's just the notice that they're going to do it. I
Okay.
don't know that the application's in. I'll check real quick, but
Okay.
because if it is, we're going to get a higher quality version of the document that we can.
Okay.
look
Well,
at.
we'll want to post anything once they do
Yep.
officially file. We'll want to post that.
Okay.
Sorry, Nate.
So,
Anything
no,
else?
that's okay. So just three, I'll try to be really fast with the
Okay.
updates for the pedestrian and bicycling issues. So we sent out last week a press release, or 2 weeks ago, excuse me, a press release indicating that we were actually awarded a bicycling and pedestrian priority area designation for the state level. It's something we applied for as a recommendation of the working group back in March, April, May timeframe. We were putting together the application, and they let us know just about a week and a half ago or 2 weeks ago. So again, just a refresher, that then will precipitate a planning process with the state SHA. The Highway Administration will lead that planning process in collaboration with us and folks like Sandy Brecker, who was on the call with the county and some of their staff, to develop a plan for these areas. And the boundaries are essentially Kensington and Kengar, and it corresponds with our already existing county designation boundaries. So that will help to precipitate, better planning, increased, improved design standards, ability to access some of the more innovative mechanisms that the state has and the county has for traffic improvements and pedestrian improvements and bicycling improvements. It'll also just get all of us working together in a more formal process. So one thing that will feed into that is talked about this a little bit before, is another thing that we were able to secure was the Transportation Land Use Connections Program from Montgomery County, the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments. We got the grant where a firm will start to work with us in a very hopefully participatory process to vision what we can do to improve the Connecticut Avenue corridor for pedestrian and bicycling improvements. And, the secondary roads that'll be studied there are University, Knowles, Pliers Mill, and I think that's it. But that is going to kick off actually tomorrow. So Tracy, maybe Matt might be able to join. We're gonna have a kickoff meeting. Just us, the three of us from the town, representative from the Council of Governments, the consultant. The firm is named Mead and Hunt, and they have a tremendous amount of experience in Maryland working on this, working on even areas related to Connecticut Avenue. So we're really excited about this grant, and it will feed into that, what we call the BIPA process that I mentioned before, of the integrated planning with the county and the state. So we'll meet tomorrow and kick that off, but stay tuned. They will have some public engagement meetings, and we're really going to work hard to get as much feedback and input as we can about that process as we envision what that could be. One last update, as Tracy mentioned, we had the Walktober event, or inaugural Walktober event. People who came were able to get, thanks to Tracy and Carrie Ann for designing the logo, a commemorative vest, safety vest that we all walked around in. If you drove around town between the hours of 2 and 3:30 yesterday, you would have seen us. You could not have missed us if you were within like 2 miles, because we were.
Nate froze.
Nate froze.
Am I frozen?
Yeah.
No,
You're
you're not
unfrozen.
anymore. You're good now.
Okay. We had to exercise the rain date because of the challenges with the rain the day before, but we had about 15 to 20 people. Thanks to Tracy and Darren for joining. We had delegates Shetty and Solomon join as well. And it was well attended. A couple people on the Zoom. Let me see who was here that was attended. Who had attended? John Gerson and Susan Gerson were there. But we had a good turnout. Lots of questions. We were able to fit it in an hour and a half. But we identified additional areas for improvement. We pointed out some of the things that were going well that we were able to advance on in the last year. Areas where there are some opportunities for and gaps for filling. So thanks everybody who helped with planning that. Thanks in particular Tracy, Carrie Ann, as well as Allison Verlin on the working group for helping with me with that.
Yeah, the good news is that more than likely some of these improvements we will be able to make fairly quickly within the town. The bad news is that the state and the county will be a little bit slower in making these improvements. So I think, once we have that plan in place, we'll have to figure out some strategy for getting these improvements funded. Because otherwise, a lot of them we may be waiting for development in order to put them in place, but which is good though that they are there, so they'll have something to follow. But I know there's some intersections. We didn't get to talk about it too much, but that one at Howard and Connecticut, I'd really like to see that cross somehow, some way for the state to figure out how to make that a safer crossing.
Yeah.
Hey, Nate,
it's the first step towards tangible improvements. So
yeah,
I know you've got it down in the document, but and I'm happy to volunteer to help you. Just some way to create a repository of all of these identified improvements. I'm not around, or you're not around, or Matt's not around. Like, so future councils, when development comes up, the future DRB, right, can pick up an address or a building name and know, like, oh yeah, there are improvements that we want to try and see developed in as a community benefit.
Yeah, I mean, we have a spreadsheet we've shared with Matt, and the town staff have it, but it's iterative. I mean, it's ongoing. We're actually planning to do another walkability audit in December, like we did last year. We go and kind of survey everything, but.
Uh-oh. Lost you again, Nate. Okay.
Maybe you should work on 5G in the town too.
Yeah, I'm back.
Yeah,
I just see you guys all freezing, and I know it's me. I'm sorry.
Well, we had some drinks while we were waiting for you, so.
Wow, you're fast.
You are gone
Um,
much longer than you think.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, Connor, I'll follow up with you
perfect.
on that.
Okay, good. Anything else? Great.
Not for me.
Great, thank you. I've just got a couple of things that I just want to mention, particularly to the council. I do want to thank the Racial Justice Committee for the community read that they held on October 9th. It was pretty, I was impressed with the number of people that attended and the back and forth that we had with the author. So I definitely, I think they plan to do these, continue to do the community reads at least twice a year and maybe more, but it was a very good event and I was glad I was able to come. We got a couple of new events coming up. I just want to bring that to the council's attention as well as to the public. We're going to do a Halloween pop-up in St. Paul Park. We're going to do it on October 31st from 7 to 8. So I know that it is a Sunday and Halloween, unfortunately does fall on school nights most of the time. So hopefully 7 to 8 will work and let the kids eat their candy, trick or treat from 5 to 7, and then they can come out and run it off and then hopefully go to bed at 8 o'clock. But we're just going to give it a try. See, maybe it'll be an event that will grow. And there'll be video clips from your favorite horror movies and not too scary stuff and some fun music and just mostly and some spooky sounds, and hopefully in a dark park it'll be lots of fun. So but maybe we can
feel like I need more candy.
Well, we're going to do it as a pop-up, so we're not going to push too much publicity towards it. We're hoping it to make it more of a neighborhood event. We're not trying to replace Scary Perry at all, but because we have not had fun stuff for the kids the last year, and Scary Perry's decided not to do it this year, that we just give this a try and see how it goes. So I know there's been a lot of changeover on Perry Avenue, which, when you buy your house, I don't know whether you have to sign a contract saying that you will decorate Halloween and buy, hundreds of dollars in candy. But, I do want them to know that we're hoping that they will be back next year. So, but we're going to just give this a try. A couple of other events. We're doing a Light Up K-Town event, which will be December 3rd. More information is going to be in the upcoming newsletter. So that's at the Howard Avenue Park. This is replacing what we were going to do. We were going to do an Oktoberfest, but because Gigs was having so many of their outdoor concerts, there just really wasn't a date that we could make it work because we wanted to do it outside. So we decided to do a Light Up K-Town ceremony in the park. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And again, there'll be more information coming up in the journal. We're also planning on doing the Christmas tree lighting on December 5th. So that will be going on, as well as the menorah lighting. I'm getting, out of order, but we will be doing the menorah lighting on November 28th, which is also a Sunday. So that more information about that will be coming up. We have a dog parade in Flynn Park that Mark Hudson is organizing November 13th. The K-Town Ladies has an event on November 10th, and most of these events are outside. I feel like I'm missing one. Oh, I did have a question for the council. Right now we have tentatively planned the Nighthawks for November 24th. That is an indoor event at Town Hall, and I just want to confirm, right now everyone has to be wearing a mask in Town Hall. I'm not sure the band would not have to wear one. They're not required to. Does anybody have any concerns about that?
No, I think it's an event that you choose whether or not you want to go based on what you think the safety of the protocols are. The other thing about the county meetings that I've been listening to on health, and Tracy, I think you've been on more than I have, they seem to believe that the numbers are starting to fall, and the 7-day rolling average is starting to fall to where the indoor mask mandate is, the removal of it maybe, just a couple weeks or, so away.
Okay, okay. Well, I will talk to Mark Warmer about that we're okay with them if they want to hold the event. And as you said, I mean, these are not mandatory events. They are if you are feeling comfortable and want to attend. The one item that I did miss was caroling in the park. Again, Mark Hudson will be organizing this event. It's for December 22nd in Flynn Park, and he is working with some of our with Warner Memorial and St. Paul's, and I don't know if they've reached out to Christ Episcopal, but the churches here in Kensington to have a caroling in the park event. We did that in 2019, and except for the fact that nobody knows the second or third or fourth verses of most of the songs, it was a very well attended event. So he wanted to try that again. So we're going to go ahead and have that. So lots of information coming up in the December journals. So I think I sent out an email a couple of weeks ago regarding deadlines. So please get that to Carrie Ann this week if you haven't already. She will be working on that, has already actually started. So if the pedestrian bike working group has anything, and the Connor, if you want to bring up anything about the DRB, anything upcoming, and Darren, I know you wanted to submit something regarding Thrive. So please get that information to her.
For the pedestrian biking, can you hear me now? I've tried to switch to a hotspot. Sorry, guys. Was it terrible the entire time with my connectivity? I know I went out a few times.
No, just those 2 times.
Okay, good. No, I think we could just basically copy and paste the press release just to get it out again. I mean, it says everything we need.
Okay, well, just let her know that that's what you want to do.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Yeah, I think that's a good idea of getting it actually in the journal. It's good, better public record too. All right, is there anything else from the council or does anyone in the audience have a question on anything we spoke about? Okay. All right, if you I saw a hand somewhere. Is that you, Jack?
This is for the public. I thought that was going to come.
Okay, no, I'll get to that. I gotta let the town manager have something to say first.
Sorry.
I thought you were asking for
No, any comments on what the council just discussed?
Right, yeah, that's what I have.
That's fine.
Very briefly, Mayor Furman, for Connor Crimmins, for Councilmember Crimmins, I really appreciate your keeping on top of these developments at the county level. These are very disturbing. We've seen some very recent commentary about them, and in various publications, I think they've been really on target. Just kind of curious if you could give us your best guess estimate, Connor, as to when all this might start happening. I know it's like crystal ball gazing a little bit, but if you wouldn't mind doing so. Like 5 years?
Yeah.
Are we looking 3 years? Are we looking 6 months before this kind of stuff could start happening in Kensington?
Well, I think there's 2 ways to answer that. The first is, when will it change from a legal zoning change within the county? So as I mentioned, the the Attainable housing strategies, which is kind of going first before they finish Thrive to kind of inform how they're doing housing. They believe they will be done. Planning board staff will be done with all of their work sessions by late November. And then they will propose a zoning text amendment for the county council to address all of the zoning changes, which they're redlined. If you go through the plan, everything that's in there, they tell you what section and what's going in and what's coming out. It is there and you get a sense of what it is, but that, the idea, I would presume they will look to file that maybe December. They would have a public meeting on it. If they've worked quickly, you're talking, 2 sessions. So early part of 2022, I think you will see attainable housing. Thrive, there has been a discussed timeline very similar, trying to get Thrive resolved. and approved by the council in that November, December timeframe. The planning staff's approved version for the county council it was already finished and submitted. It's just getting it into a public hearing and then, getting it approved. Then the second part of the question is, when might you start seeing this? And that's harder to answer, except for to say that part of the trouble with, you can permit it under zoning right away, right? That could be early. I really think it will be early part of 2022. The second part is, when is somebody going to do this to their property? When is the market effects going to be that you'll see a neighbor's house be torn down and then townhomes be put in, or a triplex or quadplex put in? I think there's certainly some properties in our town that you could see that quickly, right? It really just becomes, when are your neighbors planning to move? Because then it all comes down into, likely the person who buys their home will be making that decision. And one of the things that we are seeing, and I know Councilmember Bartram just wrote an op-ed in Bethesda Beat that touches on this. Private equity is buying a lot of homes. I don't want to pin it on one company, but BlackRock is mentioned specifically, but there are a number of
hedge funds type.
Yeah, hedge fund investment funds that since 2008 have realized that buying private homes, especially in these jurisdictions where they are upzoning, that's the technical term, they are giving the ability for additional density, has become very profitable, because then they can buy a house, they can cut it up into 3 units of housing or 4 units of housing, and then start renting them all off. And the one thing that might, the economics part of this is that Down County, where we live, and certainly the Chevy Chases, the land and the property already is very expensive. So the numbers have to be there. I mean, if you're buying $1 million property and then tearing it down, well, you already have $1 million in that you have to recoup. So, a very simple way of math is, I need to at least sell, if I'm building a duplex, I've got to sell each for $500,000. Well, wait a second. If you tear it down, you still have to build it. You have to go through the planning. So it could be that it's, a $1.6 million project by the time it's done. And that's when all of a sudden, what you would have if it's a duplex is 2 $800,000 units. And this is where the words get kind of fancy, right? $800,000 is not affordable. Affordable is tied to an AMI value that puts, based on a national average, a home has to be about $525,000 or less to be able to be afforded by somebody making 70% of AMI. So you're not going to get a $525,000 unit. We've already done the simple math that shows it's maybe $800,000. So I think the other concern is where they may put in these priority housing districts, which the town is in, does a house come down, and instead of trying to build a duplex, right, a quadplex or a series of townhouses, if you can fit them onto that lot, then the math becomes, it tilts more in favor of the developer. And when that happens, that's when I think you'll see it. I don't think that's the answer anybody wants to hear, Joe.
No, but I think
that's the reality.
I think that's the answer that your comments earlier were pointing toward, and I think it's important to be forewarned about this. So it's sooner probably than later.
Yeah. To give another hat tip to somebody who's on the meeting, John Gersten, he sent me an article of another trend that we know about, but it was a really well written one about the silver tsunami that's coming, right? And the county has acknowledged we have a huge senior citizen housing issue that's coming, because as they vacate these larger homes and they want to stay in their communities, they need a place to live. And then that takes into the secondary count of when they can't live independently anymore and they have to live dependently. But what it leads to is we do have a lot we have an aging population in the county, which means we might also see a wave of people selling those primary residences, which means we might have a wave of these private equity companies starting to make investment decisions and buying up properties.
Okay, thank you, Connor. right, so let's move down to the town manager and the staff. Matt?
The only thing I'll add prior to resolutions are we're planning leaf collection season beginning Monday, November 8th. It will run for roughly 8 weeks and will provide information to the public moving forward in the next journal and on the email notification system.
Okay, good. Did you want to give just maybe Alex can let us know how many surveys have been returned so far, and just remind everyone of the deadline to get those in?
Yeah, so as of today, when we left, I think we had 218 submitted, and the deadline is November 1st.
Okay, great, thank you. And are we going to be able to look at any data? Are we going to have that on the meeting in November?
We should.
Okay.
We should have everything complete by the November, I believe it's the
I think it's
8th.
the 8th.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is going to come up pretty quickly on us. So, but I think, Alex, you've been tracking this stuff already and putting it into a spreadsheet. So, okay, good. So as you're getting it done now, that's good. So, okay, great. All right. Counselor, do you have any questions on leafs or surveys? Good. Okay, great. All right, so let's move down to public appearances. Jack? Go ahead.
I have 3 astronomical announcements.
Okay.
On October 20, there'll be a full moon. On the evening of the 21st into the morning of the 22nd, the Orion meteor shower, estimating about 20 meteors per hour. Unfortunately, with the nearby full moon, viewing conditions are less than ideal this year. And thirdly, the evening of November 4 and the morning of November 5 will be the Towers meteor shower, which usually produces 5 to 10 meteors per hour. The new moon will allow for ideal viewing conditions, and the best time for viewing is just after midnight.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jack.
You're welcome.
Joe, you got your hand up.
Sure do, Mayor Furman. Good evening. You know, it's none too early for the town officials to be in touch with the authorities at the Mormon church to encourage them to take steps to avoid the kind of traffic jams that clogged the streets of the southern part of town last year during their Festival of Lights. This led to not only enormous and unwelcome congestion in this part of town, but also an awful lot of unnecessary air pollution as people were idling in their cars, waiting to advance slowly towards the site there. And I know
I'm just going to interrupt you because they have canceled that event, Joe.
Well, I wish I had known that.
Yeah. So,
Anyway.
I mean, you can continue on, but they did cancel it.
So there's no festival lights or whatever they called it.
That is correct.
Good to know. Good to know. And I hope in the future that we don't have a repeat of what we had last year.
Well, I hope not. I mean, I would like to hope that people are able to attend the event and get out of their car. I know the drive-through didn't help. So, but I know it's a popular event, but at least for this year,
Good.
It's been canceled.
I'm glad to hear that. Thank you, Mayor Furman, for the good news.
You're welcome.
Listen, I also wanted to say that I was impressed by the commentary that I read just this evening by Councilmember Bartram. His commentary, I guess, in Bethesda Magazine about Thrive. I really found it well argued and well reasoned, and overall very impressive. And also, you know, earlier this evening, his comments during the very lengthy climate change presentation, I thought were quite intriguing and interesting. And I was very pleased to see these contrarian viewpoints being expressed by the council. As you know, Mayor Furman, all too often the council tends to be pretty unanimous in its views. And so it's very healthy when dissenting views are expressed and expressed so clearly. And as you may know, over the years, I've clashed with Councilmember Bartram on a number of issues, but of late, I'm finding his viewpoints very interesting and well reasoned. And so, allow me to say that I think that these kinds of comments and these kinds of observations are most welcome, and I hope we see more of them, especially in terms of the council not being unanimous all the time about all the issues. And also, there was a recent matter that I brought to the attention of Councilmember Engel about a sort of errant scooter that has been left in various parts of the southern part of town here of late. And I just hope the town does not become a dumping grounds for these sorts of vehicles, because I do recall Councilmember Crimmins mentioning in the past that we don't want this to become another Alexandria or Arlington, I think it was, where the scooters and the like are just sort of left almost everywhere in town. And so I'm glad that there was some attention brought to this matter pretty quickly to the town manager. And I just hope we don't see this become a real problem in the future with
Well, be sure to tune in next month. We will be talking with Sandy, who's going to come back and talk about the bike share, and it'll be an opportunity to see what technology they may be using to stop the dumping of these vehicles, because I know if they're left in the middle of sidewalks, that's just not safe. And so we have invited her to come speak to us about that, and certainly sharing your views would be good. So.
Great. Hey, you make it very appealing, Mayor Furman, to attend council meetings.
I know.
Thanks for the heads up.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. Darren, Nate, I don't know if you want to say anything in regards to Joe's comments, or it's up to you. Or we can just move on.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So let's go down to ordinance, resolutions, and regulations. Matt?
Mayor and Council, we had a presentation from Justin Watson of AS Creative Services earlier this evening. Before you is resolution number R-14-2021, a resolution of the Mayor and Council of the Town of Kensington authorizing the town manager to accept a proposal from AS Creative Services for certain Town of Kensington website improvements. If the Council approves the resolution this evening, Town Attorney Ferguson has asked that we make a slight amendment and just say that the contract is pending final review by the town attorney.
Okay. Council, does anybody have any questions regarding the resolution? Anyone in the audience have a question regarding the resolution? Okay, would someone like to make a motion?
You're muted.
I move that we adopt resolution R-14-2021, resolution of the Mayor and Council to allow the town manager to accept a proposal from AS Creative Services for the Town of Kensington website, as is to be amended by the town attorney.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
Number 2, Matt?
Before the council this evening is resolution number R-15-2021, a resolution of the Mayor and Council of the Town of Kensington authorizing the town manager to accept a proposal from McLean Controls Incorporated for the replacement and installation of controls for a carrier VVT system at Town Hall. For people not familiar with the building, our control system does not talk to each other. We're trying to fix that, so we have heat and air conditioning that's a little more consistent than we have now. We received 2 prices, and we had our building services company, MCOR, review both proposals, and they suggested that we move forward with the proposal from McLean Controls.
Okay. Council, any questions?
We'll add that we are actually asking for $2,000 in contingency, just in case we have to replace any dampers during the repairs. We were advised it's unlikely, but we wanted to leave a little bit of room in case the damper needs to be replaced.
Okay.
Matt, is this also to be amended by the town attorney?
Yes.
Okay. And if so, in the 1, 2, 3, 4th whereas, can you just add another $ to that value?
Sure.
Okay. Any other questions from the council or comments? Is anybody in the audience? Oh, go ahead, sir.
Adding these, you know, a little wiggle room so it doesn't have to come back to us if there's.
Same.
Okay. Any comment, Joe?
Thanks, Mayor Furman. Just to be clear here, there were bids solicited and 2 bids were received on this proposal?
There were no bids. We received 2 proposals. It was not bid out publicly. We asked for proposals from companies, 2 separate companies.
I see. So in effect, you had separate proposals that, you know, could qualify as bids.
Yes.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Can we get a motion?
Connor should do it. He's got.
Yeah, I'm on a roll here. I will move that we adopt resolution number R-15-2021, resolution of the mayor and council authorizing the town manager to accept the bid proposal from McLean Controls Incorporated, as is to be amended by the town attorney.
Okay, and then we want the add the a price into one of the whereases.
Yeah, it just needs a $. It's just missing it. I'm nerdy in OCD.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. All right, Matt?
Thank you. Before the council this evening is resolution number R-16-2021, a resolution of the mayor and town council of Kensington authorizing the town manager to accept a proposal from Chamberlain Washington Incorporated for the repointing of the brick parapet at Town Hall. Within the council packet, the brick parapet is at the top of the building. This is separate than the veranda and parapet, which is the next resolution. We received 2 proposals for this project as well. We have worked with Washington Chamberlain on a much smaller project. After discussing their original proposal with us, they actually brought the price down $9,630 for us. So we're asking that the council accept this proposal for Chamberlain Washington as amended, final review by our town attorney.
Matt, can you remind everyone how old this building is?
It was built in 1927.
Okay.
So we're dealing with a 94-year-old building that needs a lot of help to keep us going. So.
And can you tell us why it needs to be, what happens when you don't repoint the bricks?
We have severe leaking in the building, especially in the 3rd floor offices. So.
Okay. All right. Council, do you have any questions?
I just had one question about this and then the next resolution for the veranda. What was the logic of separating the bids? Are they 2 completely different processes, or, you know, why do we decide to do that? Just out of curiosity.
They were just different projects that happened at different times. We had hoped to have the veranda and parapet out front done last March. There were some issues with the bid process. That was a publicly bid document. And we just got to it now that we're able to approve that one. You know, they were just different. Had they lined up, we might have gone with the same company. So.
Was that the second company that we got the second proposal from?
No, they were completely separate.
Okay.
For our R-16-2021, the lower proposal that we received, we are not going with because it would not solve the problem. They were only going to repoint the exterior of the bricks. Chamberlain Washington was going to do the entire repointing. We didn't want to have to come back in a couple of years and redo it. That's why it's an expensive project, but it will help us out a lot with some of the leaking we're having.
Yeah, we've had to do that at our house. I know it's better to do it with the full repointing. So no, thanks for that.
And then Matt, I mean, the CIP for the building has been anticipating just such these occasions.
Yeah, I mean, we put money away every year for the CIP. Again, you'll remember we got the HUD grant this year that went into the building to make us a community center back in 1996. So those funds can be used towards this as well. Again, we're dealing with a 94-year-old building that's calling for some help. So.
And I will remind everybody that we were reimbursed for these funds from 1996 just last year. So I want to applaud the staff, particularly Susan, for her consistency in getting through at least 3 administrations of HUD in order to get these funds. So, and I believe it was, for the record, $350,000. Is that correct? So this is an opportunity to put the funds back into the building to have it last us almost 100 years. So anyway, any further questions from the council?
One more note. Because the project is more than $30,000, it does need to be approved by an extra majority of the council, essentially waiving our bid requirements. So that's why it's noted on the agenda. So.
Okay. Well, hopefully Darren will come back from letting out his dogs. So it's going to pop
back, sort of. Just incessant whining.
Oh, okay. Well, I cannot hear her. Something. Okay, I just want, for the record, my dog is sleeping on my bed, and then I have another dog laying in the chair. So my dogs are being well behaved.
Yes.
Okay. So just so for the record. Okay, so are there any questions from the audience before we, Joe?
Thanks, Mayor Furman. I'm slightly confused about this in the sense that the town's being asked to waive the bid process, but I thought I heard the town manager say that 2 proposals or 2 bids were received on this work. So
we received 2 proposals. A proposal was not a public bid. We asked for pricing.
I understand the technical difference, but in effect, we're getting, competing proposals, right?
Correct. Yes.
So what then triggers the extra majority?
Our code requires the council to approve by extra majority if we waive the bid requirements. So any purchase or service above $30,000 would require the council to allow us to waive those bid requirements or the public bid document to move forward with the project.
I see. So a public bid document is a little more formal than going after proposals, which could be much more informal and.
It is incredibly time consuming and expensive. I'll mention it in resolution 17, which we put out the bid in March and only now we're moving forward with it. It was a 123-page document. It involved 11 bids, reviewing the bids, public meetings. The repointing of this project was a little smaller. It wasn't necessary for that process. That's why we're requesting the waive of the bid.
Generally speaking, I think bidding it, despite the difficulties that may attach to seeking bids and drafting bid documents, it's a far better way to go than to just casually seek proposals from different enterprises. I think bidding is a sound process, and I think that the town too often waives it, and this is not the only time in which that has happened.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, council, is there a motion?
I move that we adopt, Matt, before I do that, pending a town attorney. Okay. Move that we adopt resolution number R-16-2021, resolution of the mayor and council authorizing the town manager to accept the bid proposal from Chamberlain, Washington for the repointing of the brick parapet at Kensington Town Hall pursuant to an amendment from the town attorney.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. And Matt, the last one?
Okay. Resolution number R-17-2021 is a resolution of the mayor and council of the town of Kensington authorizing the town manager to accept the bid from Contracting Specialists Incorporated for the repair of the veranda and parapet at Town Hall. Our veranda and parapet partially collapsed last August. This is for the repair of that. And we went through a public bid document. And as I just mentioned, we bid it out in March. We were hoping to have this completed by now. We were having some issues with some of the bids submitted. Contracting specialist was the third lowest bid. Our building inspector, Neil Stabile, and I met with two finalists, including contracting specialists, and Neil and I are recommending that we accept their bid. We are also asking for a contingency of $20,000 on top of the bid price, which would allow for repurposing of the bricks. They're going to try to repurpose as much of the town hall brick as they can. This is not something that's easily or readily available, and we're going to have some difficulty matching it as well. So there's going to be some contingency funds that will need to go towards that. We're looking at a 40-day construction time frame, roughly 8 weeks. If approved this evening, we'll start the permitting tomorrow morning. My hope is that they'll start right after Thanksgiving and be done sometime by mid-January.
Has the staff needs to do a plan on how to access the building during this period of time?
They will submit a plan for us. The main level, which brings you into the drill hall level, will be closed at all times. And we are requesting, and the contractor has agreed to provide egress on the bottom floor of town hall during non-operational hours and as best as they can during operational hours. But we'll have to access the building through the loading dock or come through the council chambers.
Okay, because you need to work with Shirley, because British Embassy Players has booked the building for a play in which it's a pantomime, which will mean children.
Yep.
So we need to make sure that it is safe for their performance, and they need to be informed of it as well. Okay. Is there any questions from the council regarding this resolution?
Just operationally, when would construction start?
Probably right after Thanksgiving. That's our hope. We asked the contractor if there were any concerns about concrete. They were not concerned. They said they could use warming boxes, or as long as the air temperature is about 40 degrees, they weren't concerned.
I know Silver Creek was doing concrete work in the winter last year. So
yeah. Just operationally, the other events like the menorah lighting, none of that will be impacted.
We advised them of each of those. They said they could clear most of their tools from the front of the building. We are going to allow them to put a storage unit in the parking lot. So they would have it clear for the menorah lighting, the Christmas tree lighting. And again, they are aware of the play group. And in case it goes into the new year, just if there's weather issues, and Cat is there as well, we'll kind of follow the same protocol.
And then the 11 bids were received. How many were of a quality that were worthy of being reviewed versus just, I hate to call them throwaway bids, but were insufficient?
So we gave serious thought to 6 of the 11 bids.
Okay.
The issue we were having and what took so long is the 2 low bids, which they were not qualified, and it just took a process to get through there. And it just, we're actually very happy with contracting specialists and the other finalists as well. And there was about $20,000 in difference between the two. So Neil recommended that we move forward.
That's all I have.
Any other questions from the council? Okay. Any questions from the audience? Joe?
Thanks, Mayor Furman. So briefly, Matt, what was wrong with the 2 lowest bids that were eliminated? I mean,
they weren't qualified. And
right, I know you've said that, but what made them?
I'm not going to comment on that. It's just a long process to figure that out. So
I don't understand what that means, though. They were not qualified. I mean,
their prior work didn't meet our expectations of the bid. And there's just, it took a long time to go through that process and review their prior work.
So it was their work, it was their track record, essentially, then?
Their prior work experience didn't directly relate to what we had bid the contract at.
Okay. And were these 2 bids substantially lower than the 87,000 and whatever that the third lowest bid submitted?
The lowest bid was about $20,000 less. The second lowest bid was in between those.
Good. Well, I'm glad to see the bidding process is alive and well, and apparently has succeeded in this case.
Yep. Thank
Thanks, Mayor Furman.
Mhm. Okay, is there a motion?
Move that we adopt resolution number R-17-2021, a resolution of the mayor and council to authorize the town manager to accept a bid proposal from Contracting Specialists Incorporated to repair the veranda and parapet at Town Hall pursuant to amendment by the town attorney.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. Last item on the agenda is adjournment. So I want to thank everybody for, it is 9:45, and I want to thank everybody for sticking it out. And looking for a motion to adjourn.
Next
Move to
meeting is
adjourn.
November 8th, right?
November 8th. Yes, so, and that will come up very fast. So I also want to remind everyone that don't forget to get your articles to Carrie Ann or let her know what you want to run by the end of the week. And we will be planning a work session hopefully in November. So we'll get those dates, some dates out there. Okay.
I second Nate's motion to adjourn.
Did Nate make a motion to adjourn? I
I'll
didn't.
do it again since you started
He
talking.
didn't
about
hesitate.
it. So
No,
I'll
I-
move to adjourn.
Is there, and Connor seconded, is that correct?
Well, now I'm reconsidering my
You're
second.
reconsidering. Darren, did you want to jump in there?
I'm
I'll s-
itching to vote for it.
Okay.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All
All
right.
right, thank you all very much.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thanks,
All
everybody.
right,
Take
good night,
care.
thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.